There's a certain kind of man life tests differently. He's the one who looks too strong to break. The one everyone assumes is fine because he keeps showing up, because his tone is calm, his face unreadable. But inside, there's a quiet ache, the kind that doesn't ask for attention. It just hums beneath the surface, like a low frequency only he can hear. For years, life sends him almosts, almost love, almost peace, almost recognition. He learns to carry the ache like a badge of endurance, mistaking the absence of collapse for strength. But something in him knows the truth, that he's not waiting for another woman to arrive. He's waiting for the part of himself that stopped believing he was worth arriving for. The story of rare souls isn't about superiority. It's about sensitivity disguised as stoicism. Men who feel deeply, but grew up in worlds that didn't have language for feeling. They were told that devotion is proven by how much they can hold in silence. That emotion is weakness, that tenderness must be earned. So they become pillars, and then wonder why no one leans in close. Jung would call this the wounded king in exile, the archetype of the man who holds responsibility but not rest, who serves everyone's need for stability while starving his own need for warmth. His life becomes a cycle of near connection followed by slow withdrawal, chemistry with what will eventually leave. Modern life only amplifies the confusion. Dating apps, instant choices, endless comparison. The psyche's old longing for ritual and initiation is replaced by swiping and guessing. The masculine spirit, built for depth, is asked to perform quick intimacy. The heart, built for slow recognition, keeps meeting mirrors that crack too soon. If you've ever felt that pattern, the strange gravity toward what hurts, the high of rescue followed by the fall of regret, you're not broken, you're patterned. Your nervous system learned a rhythm of love that includes tension, distance, and chase. What feels like destiny is often your body remembering who it had to be to survive affection. Brief pause, lower music. So before the right person arrives, life puts these men through something that feels like a long night. A period where everything familiar stops working, where the coping strategies lose their charge. The numbness doesn't protect anymore. The distractions lose taste. And beneath the fatigue, there's this whisper. What if this ache isn't punishment, but initiation? The path through that night is not about fixing yourself to become ready. It's about seeing what you've mistaken for readiness, the armor, the control, the charm, and noticing what they've cost you. Every almost you've met was a mirror. Every heartbreak, a rehearsal for meeting yourself. Tonight, we'll walk through what life puts these rare souls through, not as tragedy, but as training. Each stage strips away a layer of illusion until only what's real can stay. Until devotion stops being a performance and starts being presence. Take a breath. Let your shoulders drop. You don't need to earn this conversation, because the dawn doesn't come after the night. It comes through it. Attraction has a strange honesty to it. It doesn't care about reason or resume. It moves from somewhere older, a memory etched beneath thought. The kind of attraction that takes your breath away often isn't about the present at all. It's your nervous system recognizing a pattern it's known for years and whispering home. That whisper feels like destiny, but Jung would call it repetition, the psyche trying to finish an unfinished story. In men, this often shows up through the anima, the inner feminine image formed in boyhood. She isn't a person. She's a template of how safety once felt, or how it didn't. When a man meets a woman whose tone, rhythm, or silence resembles that first imprint, his entire body reacts. The chemistry is electric, not because she's the one, but because she feels familiar. Gabor Mate writes that addiction isn't about the substance, it's about our relationship with relief. Emotional addiction works the same way. We chase the person who stirs our oldest ache because they also soothe it briefly. The highs of connection and the lows of withdrawal become the only language we know for love. The body learns to confuse activation with aliveness. It's a quiet trap. You think you're choosing passion, but your biology is choosing regulation. You think it's love, but it's cortisol and dopamine dancing in circles, feeding each other. It feels like truth because it's familiar, and what is familiar always feels safe, even when it hurts. Imagine a boy who learned that affection came with unpredictability. One day warmth, the next day cold. As a man, he meets someone who evokes the same dance. His chest tightens, his focus sharpens, every cell wakes up. Not because it's right, but because it's known. His body says, "This must be love." His mind follows, weaving poetry around the pattern. Here's where the archetype of Narcissus enters. He didn't love himself. He loved the image that looked like him. We do the same. We fall for reflections of our wound, partners who carry a fragment of our unhealed story. When they turn away, it's not only loss, it's our mirror being taken from us. This is the paradox. What feels magnetic might be memory. What feels destined might be defense. Chemistry is a brilliant liar when it speaks the language of the past. Yet recognizing this isn't a call to distrust your heart. It's an invitation to slow down enough to listen differently. When attraction surges, notice where in your body it lives. Does it feel like warmth spreading or like a rush that narrows your breath? That simple observation begins to rewrite the pattern. Awareness is what turns compulsion into choice. Every great myth begins with recognition. The hero sees the monster and realizes it shares his face. In the same way, noticing who you're drawn to and why isn't judgment, it's integration. You're not broken for wanting intensity. You're human for mistaking electricity for safety. Life sends the same pattern until it no longer fits. Until you can meet that familiar spark, take a breath, and instead of running toward it, simply see it. That's when repetition ends. What feels like destiny is often recognition, your nervous system greeting its oldest prison guard. Watch how this flips when the image starts talking back. The real trap appears next. Every man who has loved deeply has at some point built a temple in his mind, not to a person, but to the idea of who he hoped they were. Idealization feels noble at first. You see the best in someone, hold them above the noise, protect them from your own doubt. But slowly, the line between admiration and projection blurs. What began as love becomes a way of staying safe. The hidden script here is subtle. We idealize not because we're naive, but because real intimacy feels terrifying. To truly meet another person means risking disappointment, control, and image. So the psyche creates a solution. Love an illusion you can't lose. Keep the connection in fantasy, where it never has to challenge you. Kahneman called it loss aversion, the brain's bias toward avoiding pain over seeking truth. In the emotional realm, this becomes a strategy. Worship the unreachable to avoid being rejected by the real. You convince yourself that what you've imagined is more beautiful than what exists. It's safer to adore from distance than to touch and tremble. For the man raised to be strong, control often masquerades as devotion. He polishes the statue of his projection until every flaw disappears, mistaking perfection for love. Yet the more flawless she becomes in his mind, the more invisible he becomes in his own story. Idealization drains vitality because it binds energy to unreality. It's an attempt to manage loss before it happens, and in doing so, it guarantees emptiness. Jung saw projection as the psyche's attempt to meet itself in disguise. We cast our inner potentials outward, the kindness we repress, the warmth we long for, the chaos we deny. When we fall in love, we aren't seeing the other person clearly. We're seeing the missing pieces of ourselves lit up on their face. And when they inevitably falter, we feel betrayed, not by them, but by our own illusion collapsing. There's a quiet heartbreak in realizing you were in love with a reflection. It's like waking from a dream you didn't want to end. Yet that heartbreak is sacred. It's the beginning of seeing without the filter of fantasy. Pygmalion, the sculptor, carved marble into a woman and fell in love with her stillness. He begged the gods to bring her to life. The moment she moved, his worship turned to fear. Reality, it turns out, is less obedient than stone. Many men repeat this myth unconsciously, drawn to partners they can fix, save, or shape, because stone can't reject you. It also can't hold you. The moment the statue breathes, when the real woman, with her needs and moods and humanity, steps forward, the temple cracks. What remains is a choice, to cling to the fantasy and suffer control, or to let the illusion die and finally meet the living person, flawed and free. Projection isn't the enemy, it's the start of seeing. When you recognize how your mind paints others with the colors of your past, you begin to retrieve your own projections, like taking back fragments of your soul. Each retrieval restores presence, a small piece of sovereignty returning home. Behind every collapsed illusion lies a clearer sight. The fall from fantasy isn't failure, it's a descent into truth. And in that descent, a man starts to see that love was never meant to be worship. It was meant to be witnessed. Stay with this. Most men miss the next turn when the statue suddenly breathes. There's a particular exhaustion that comes from chasing what you almost have. The push-pull dynamic, the hot and cold, the sudden silence after closeness, doesn't just confuse your mind, it rewires it. It trains your nervous system to associate love with vigilance. You stop resting inside connection and start scanning for signs of danger. At first, this rhythm feels alive. The unpredictability lights up the same pathways as a slot machine. Each message, each withdrawal, each return, all of it becomes a cycle of hope and collapse. Behavioral psychology calls it intermittent reinforcement. It's the most addictive pattern known to the brain, and the same one that keeps gamblers glued to loss. In relationships, it binds the masculine drive to chaos, turning focus into obsession. Underneath that chemistry is stress. Dopamine spikes on uncertainty. Cortisol follows close behind. The body learns to crave relief from the very tension it hates. You think you're addicted to her, but what you're really addicted to is the oscillation, the swing between craving and soothing. That swing keeps you from ever meeting yourself in stillness. Every time she pulls away, the old wound flares. What did I do wrong? Every time she returns, the nervous system floods with reward. I'm chosen again. But the truth hiding beneath those spikes is simple. You were never in control. You were negotiating with a pattern, not a person. This covenant, the silent agreement between the inconsistent partner and the vigilant man, runs deeper than romance. It mirrors the early bond where love meant guessing, pleasing, earning. The boy who once had to read every tone shift in the room grows into a man who mistakes hyper-awareness for intimacy. He believes focus equals devotion, when in fact it's survival dressed as loyalty. Odysseus tied himself to the mast so he could hear the siren's song without being destroyed. That's the image of self-awareness in chaos, the man hearing his own longing while refusing to drown in it. Yet in this modern version, you are both sailor and siren. You create the storm, then tie yourself to it, believing endurance is proof of depth. In truth, love isn't found in the storm, but in what survives it. When the music stops, when the messages go unanswered, when the chase collapses, what's left is the part of you that's been waiting to be reclaimed. The silence after inconsistency isn't a void, it's detox. The nervous system begins to notice how much space peace actually takes. There's grief in that realization, the grief of seeing how much time has been spent managing someone else's unpredictability. But grief is also clarity, the point where the body stops negotiating and starts remembering its own rhythm. So much of masculine energy has been misdirected toward control, controlling outcome, attention, timing, narrative. But the real mastery is containment, not suppressing feeling, but holding it long enough to choose. When you stop chasing the oscillation, something steadier appears beneath it, the pulse of your own presence. The pull will always feel stronger at first. The drama of hot and cold mimics intensity, but peace has a deeper gravity once it's remembered. The more you anchor in that gravity, the less the noise can move you. You're not addicted to her. You're addicted to the oscillation that keeps you from meeting yourself. Notice what happens when the music stops. The next scene exposes the quiet cost. Every man learns early what kind of strength the world rewards. The calm tone, the quick solution, the straight posture when everything inside trembles. Over time, that discipline hardens into something else, a performance of composure so practiced it becomes invisible. It wins respect, sometimes even admiration. But inside, it costs something no one can see. The hidden script here is one of trade. You give up tenderness to maintain control. You silence vulnerability to preserve dignity. You confuse self-restraint with self-possession. The world praises your steadiness, and you begin to mistake that applause for love. But beneath the armor, the heart grows starved, not of validation, but of oxygen. Jung called this layer the persona, the mask that keeps us acceptable to society. It's not false, it's functional. The problem begins when the mask never comes off. When strength becomes a firewall against intimacy, the soul starts to dry behind the surface. You can't receive what you won't allow to reach you. Dr. Gabor Mate once wrote, that suppression often masquerades as maturity. It's easy to misread emotional containment as mastery, yet the cost is quiet disconnection from others, from body, from meaning. When everything is managed, nothing can move you. Imagine a man sitting at the head of a table he built himself, company thriving, reputation intact. Yet the silence at dinner feels heavier than the crown he thought he wanted. He isn't ungrateful. He's unseen. The very control that built his kingdom has now become its moat. Control, for all its discipline, is often fear in disguise. Fear of collapse, fear of rejection, fear of needing more than he can supply himself. Sovereignty, on the other hand, is different. Sovereignty doesn't hide from feeling. It governs it. It lets emotion speak without handing it the throne. The crowned king who cannot weep becomes a tyrant over himself first. The armor rusts from the inside. He can lift weight, run miles, negotiate contracts, yet can't let someone hold him for 10 seconds without the urge to make a joke. That's not weakness. That's protection doing its job too well. Many men mistake numbness for peace, because stillness feels foreign. When the nervous system has been trained on tension, quiet feels like absence. But stillness isn't absence. It's repair. Peace isn't empty. It's the sound of the fight ending. The persona, that outer mask of control, isn't an enemy to destroy. It's a tool to retire at the right moments. The same discipline that holds chaos can also make room for softness. When a man learns to let his composure breathe, he rediscovers the kind of strength that doesn't need witnesses. In therapy rooms and late-night prayers, this realization always sounds the same. I'm tired of being fine. It's the moment the performance cracks just enough for the heart to breathe. That breath is where devotion returns. Because control isn't sovereignty, it's fear wearing armor. And fear, once named, loses its command. Here's where most men lose their center. The next moment looks like collapse, but is actually initiation. Every story of endurance reaches a point where the armor meets its match, not through battle, but through gentleness. The encounter with someone secure, grounded, and uninterested in the performance is one of life's quiet revolutions. There's no chaos to solve, no puzzle to decode. And for a man trained to earn affection through effort, that calm can feel unbearable. The hidden script begins here. A secure presence exposes the performance. Without drama to chase or conflict to fix, the nervous system doesn't know where to place its energy. He begins to fidget inside peace, mistaking stillness for disconnection. The inner voice says, something's missing. But what's missing isn't passion, it's adrenaline. Attachment theory explains this with precision. When the body is used to unpredictability, stability feels foreign. The nervous system equates consistency with boredom because it's never known safety long enough to trust it. The first time someone loves without conditions, it doesn't feel romantic. It feels confusing. You wait for the test, the withdrawal, the moment the ground gives way. And when it doesn't, you start creating storms just to feel alive again. It's in that confusion that transformation begins. Jung might call it the meeting of shadow and self, the confrontation between the identity built on struggle and the quieter self built for peace. In that mirror, every old defense looks unnecessary. The walls you built to keep pain out now stand between you and closeness. Many men find that a truly secure partner doesn't awaken their hero instinct. She doesn't need saving, and that absence of crisis can feel like irrelevance. But in truth, it's invitation. She's not asking for rescue. She's inviting presence. Love here isn't earned through solving. It's sustained through being. The first reaction to that steadiness is often withdrawal. Without the adrenaline of pursuit, the body feels flat. Yet this flatness is not emptiness. It's recalibration. The nervous system is learning that peace doesn't require performance. It's learning to breathe in the space it once filled with effort. Boredom, then, is sometimes peace, misnamed by a body trained on storms. When chaos has been the soundtrack of love, silence sounds like loss. But after the battlefield, quiet is the only way to hear yourself again. The man who stays long enough to adjust to that silence discovers that peace has layers: softness, warmth, presence, nuance. The same depth he once sought through conflict now meets him through calm. Imagine sitting across from someone who sees through the armor and doesn't flinch. She doesn't worship your strength, nor does she punish your tenderness. She just stays. That still gaze dismantles the old machinery, the performance, the charm, the vigilant analysis. For the first time, you're not being read, you're being received. In that reception, something ancient exhales. You start realizing that the love you've been chasing was never about being chosen. It was about being safe enough to stop performing. When the right mirror arrives, it doesn't distort or flatter. It reflects. And that reflection shows the man you've been becoming underneath all your rehearsals. Peace, when finally recognized, isn't dull. It's dense. It holds the weight of everything you no longer need to defend. Stay with this. The final turn reframes, waiting for the right person into becoming recognizably right. When the right person finally arrives, it isn't fireworks. It's recognition, not of the other, but of yourself, the part that no longer needs to chase, prove, or perform. The long night of almosts has done its quiet work. The wound that once chose intensity over intimacy becomes visible, not as a flaw but as a teacher. The pattern that once ran your life starts to loosen its hold. What used to feel like rejection now feels like clarity. In the beginning, every heartbreak looked like punishment. Now, it looks like preparation. Life was never denying you connection. It was shaping your capacity to hold it. The ache trained your perception. The solitude honed your integrity. Every loss dismantled a disguise you no longer need. Projection melts in this light. You stop worshipping what others could become and start seeing what actually is. The heart learns to discern, to love without illusion, to stay without control, to leave without bitterness. Devotion shifts from managing loss to meeting reality. This is where control gives way to sovereignty. The old masculine stance of domination, over emotion, over outcome, over fear, gives place to presence. A man no longer auditioning for love can finally host it. His limits become visible, not as walls, but as borders that protect what is sacred. His silence stops being avoidance and becomes gravity. It's here that Jung's wounded king returns to his throne, not to rule others, but to inhabit himself. The exile ends not because the world changes, but because he stops negotiating with ghosts. The self he fought to earn was always waiting beneath the armor, and when the right person stands before him, she doesn't awaken his old patterns. She confirms his new posture. The war changes form. It's no longer against chaos or abandonment, but against the temptation to forget peace. Love stops being an adrenaline loop and becomes a discipline of presence. The man who once sought reflection in others now becomes a lighthouse. He doesn't chase ships through the storm. He stands, steady in his own glow, guiding by example rather than pursuit. For years, he thought devotion meant sailing after every fleeting light. But maturity teaches that true strength is to anchor, to hold the beam, night after night, so those who are ready can find their way. Music deepens, then softens again. In that stillness, life feels different. Conversations slow down. The body rests in its own rhythm. Even solitude feels companioned. The ache isn't gone. It's integrated, folded into the wisdom of someone who knows both darkness and dawn. The right person's arrival is not an ending. It's a continuation of the inner reunion that began long before they appeared. You meet them as you meet yourself, eyes clear, boundaries intact, heart unguarded. Like a lighthouse after years of chasing ships, you realize you were meant to stand and shine, not to sail after every storm. If this reflection met you somewhere real, let it breathe in you a while, not as advice, but as reminder. Peace was never outside. It was waiting for recognition.